On this episode of Bite Sized, we are watching and discussing the 52nd scene of the movie Twilight. For those of you watching along at home, that's from 1:21:26 to 1:25:01. And now, on to the episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another episode of Bite Sized. If this is your very first episode, here's what's going on. I'm watching the movie Twilight one scene at a time with a different guest every week. That means I take someone and send them again. I can't make it clear enough. I do not take anyone. They get to stay where they are or come to my apartment, geography permitting. I invite someone to be on the show with me. I send them anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 minutes of the movie Twilight, and we talk about it for about a half hour with little to no other context. Speaking of guests, joining me today is an actor and creator. She was on the 2023 Fringe cast of Dusk, a bite-sized musical, and edits their podcast, Dusk, a Two-Lit podcast. Sarah Michelle Ault, welcome to Bite Sized.
Hi, your basement's very roomy.
Thank you. I hope the leg irons aren't chafing you too much.
Oh, no, you just need a little Vaseline.
Yeah, and I hope the 45 or so other guests around here are going to stay quiet while we record. Sarah, I'm going to open this conversation the way I start every interview on the show. That is by asking you, what is your history with the Twilight franchise?
At my elementary school, third grade, I remember the books had just come out. Or at least they were, in the popular, everyone was talking about them sort of stage.
They had just hit your school.
Yes,
yeah.
And I remember my mom was reading the books, my sister was reading the books, and I went into the little library where they had the little Scholastic book fair, saw Twilight, and I was like, this is really cool, and I know that it's popular right now, and I know that people I care about are reading it and enjoying it. However, I know this is not for me.
Wow.
Just because I was too young, I was like, oh, it's a little Scandi, I can't read it.
Right. I had a similar revelation, but for a very different reason. The first time I encountered Twilight, I was also like, oh, this is not for me, because I was a high school boy and that was never Twilight's intended audience. But I'm sorry, continue.
I truly can't remember the first time I've watched the movies, but to this day, I have not read any of the books. And
hell yeah.
Honestly, I think I might die on that hill.
I know. I also agree. I was just saying on the just a couple episodes ago, I've never read the books. I refuse to read the books. I think this is more fun if I only know them as the movies. And also sometimes I do get someone on the show who's read the books and tells me some insane detail I've never heard before. And it's a
crazy.
wonderful moment of eureka. What is this mystery?
All of the stuff I've learned about book-only content has been exclusively against my will, and it, floors me every time.
Right, and leaves me with more questions than I had before I learned it.
Precisely.
Yeah. Did you see the movies for the first time at home or in theaters?
I can't remember if I saw the first one in theaters, but we definitely did see the whole rest of the, saga. Me, my mom, my sister all posted up in the theater with our popcorn.
Beautiful.
I think the movie that I have seen the most is Breaking Dawn Part 1, which is surprising to a lot of people.
Why number 4 out of 5?
I feel like when they do the TV movie marathons of the whole series, that's around the time of the day when I join in.
Right. They start Twilight around 9 or 10 in the morning. You're not catching those. And Breaking Dawn Part 2 is going to come on around midnight or whatever.
Yeah. I also hadn't watched the extended versions until about a month before doing Dusk at Fringe in 2023.
Oh, really? Yeah. I've never seen the extended versions. What's the difference? What's the big deal?
Specifically for Twilight, this first Twilight movie, there's a lot of deleted scenes.
Yeah.
Specifically a scene at the very beginning, the Cullens have just pulled up or whatever and they're watching Bella and it's dude, stay away from her. Or just something really forceful that you're that's just a human, buddy.
Edward, she's not one of us.
We also get the lovely chinchilla droppings rain stick conversation.
Okay,
that
means absolutely nothing to me.
Oh my God.
Listener, you can't see the completely blank look behind my eyes, but I've never heard of this before.
In the scene where our Pats is showing off his Edward bedroom, she finds a rain stick among his belongings.
I used to make these. Rain sticks? Yeah. I had a chinchilla, and me and my mom used to make these out of the chinchilla's droppings and, like paper towel rolls. Maybe that's weird.
Wow. I can't believe that didn't make it in the movie. I can't believe that was left on the cutting room floor. So you watched the movies as a kid. You saw them with your parents in theaters. Did you keep up with the movies through your into adulthood, the age you are now?
I'm not super, I know people make a point to rewatch the movies every year or reread the books every year. That's just not me. I just go where the dopamine takes me.
Sure.
Coming back and getting cast in Dusk and refamiliarizing myself with the first movie, because it's probably the one I know the worst, honestly, of the whole franchise.
That's the one that comes on before you wake up.
Yeah, I'm not up at 9.
Speaking of Dusk, let's transition into that.
Yeah.
For our listeners who maybe haven't heard episodes with previous Dusk cast members or have since forgotten, what is Dusk and how did you get involved with it?
Dusk is kind of an accidentally viral, I guess we would say at this point, accidentally viral Twilight parody musical, very much in the style of Star Kid or other things that have taken pop culture, big pop culture moments, and just put them to a little song and dance and had a little fun.
For listeners who aren't steeped in live comedy culture my guest and I, parody musicals are huge and have been for the last 5 or 6 years. You want to get any show put up in any theater in Chicago, just take a movie that is at all popular, turn it into a musical, you can go anywhere.
It's so fun just to do something for the sake of being silly and creating comedy and enjoying this lovely, lovely, lovely franchise that has no issues with it whatsoever.
So how did you get involved with it?
I was crying, is the way I like to start the story.
That's a great narrative hook.
Yeah. I was in Cosette's room having a terrible time crying, and she said, well, hey, look what I found. Pulls up her phone for a casting call for Dusk. Yeah. And we're like, oh my God, it's a Twilight parody musical. My mind clicks that I had seen a lot of the viral clips that Dusk had put out on their TikTok from the first workshop they did of the show. And I was like, oh my God, they're coming to Edinburgh. They're casting. We have to make it in.
Yeah.
And we did.
All right. Congratulations. What was your experience like being in the show? What character or characters did you play?
I was our dance captain for the ensemble of people. So essentially that meant that I kind of needed to know what every person in a morph suit was doing at all times. Yeah. But I did receive a lot of support from the entire ensemble in making that knowledge publicly available. Good. Sort of figuring out who steps in when we had to step out to do other things. I know I got ill during the run of the show and some people had various injuries that we would shake things up on our tracks for. But the thing that I definitely don't attach too much of my identity to is one of my special ensemble characters was the unnamed antagonist. But in Twilight, he is definitely named, and his name is James.
Interesting. Well, I think that transitions nicely into the scene we're talking about today. Let's get
excited.
Into the scene. We'll start with a brief overview and then get down into the dirty details. The baseball game has been interrupted by 3 vampires who stroll in and they have a chat, and then someone tries to eat Bella, so they decide to drive away. That's it. Let's get into the scene. We begin with James, Laurent, and Victoria, our 3 very named antagonists.
I believe this belongs to you.
Thank you.
I am Laurent. And this is Victoria. And James.
Every time I see this, I think they are on one of those moving sidewalks at the airport.
Have we gauged how fast they're walking?
No, because their bodies are moving very slow. and yet the scenery behind them is like whooshing past. Like when you see like someone walking on a moving sidewalk, and it like makes no sense. The speed that they are traveling does not line up with the speed their body is moving.
They're wearing Heelys.
Yes, basically. they are, or like on those hoverboards that were so popular like 10 years ago.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
It's never quite clear why they're there. I'm guessing they were in the area, heard baseball noises and came around to investigate, but it's never really established.
Quite literally the explanation given, I think, was that like some people were hunting us down, but we lead them off and now we're here to play baseball.
Yeah, they just sort of show up.
Oh my gosh.
James is wearing Waylon's jacket. It has no blood or obvious tears on it, which confirms my theory that they made Waylon take his clothes off before they ate him, which is weird. And further supporting that theory is Victoria wearing Waylon's shirt, which again has no visible blood stains on it.
I didn't know about the shirt. Wow.
Oh yeah, she's wearing the green Kiss Me I'm Irish shirt.
Wow, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, this scene, if I may genuinely compliment Twilight for a moment, this scene has a lot of good little payoffs that I think in a lot of other movies, it would be very easy to over-explain some of the things happening in this scene. But they are just sort of there so that you can find them if you want to, and they aren't necessary for. So like these things, like Victoria and James wearing Waylon's clothes, is a nice little detail. Or like later on when they're all staring each other down, you get close cuts of their eyes. Which is a kind of normal thing. You get some dramatic Clint Eastwood squinting in scenes like this. But it also highlights that Laurent and James and Victoria, they all have red eyes, and the Cullens all have brown eyes to show you like they drink different types of blood. There's a lot of little things, little payoffs in this scene that I actually like and are not overdone, which is kind of refreshing.
Yeah.
Where was this subtlety in other parts of the movie?
I also just like this entire plot line as a whole. I've had to describe it a few times in this way, and I think it really works, is that you think the whole of Twilight is going to be about this love story of, oh my gosh, this human meets a vampire and they make it work, yay. But now we cut to this random B plot that suddenly becomes relevant with 15, 30, if I'm being generous, minutes of the movie left.
About 40. Twilight runs you about 2 hours exactly, and this is in the early 120s.
Yeah.
It is definitely late to be introducing your antagonists. The movie spends, this is something I've never really considered because I'm watching Twilight one scene at a time. I don't really think about how it functions from start to finish as one complete narrative. I just have it in these little chunks. But you are right. It is kind of crazy that because they spend so much time in the first hour and a half of this movie establishing like this mystery that maybe Bella may be in some danger with Edward, that it's only just now when most movies would be approaching their, and I guess we get pretty quickly into the climax after this, but it is pretty crazy. These characters who have been in 2 scenes tops are now suddenly have to be very important. Like it's paced a little oddly.
I also had a thought that I just wanted to share. Rochelle Lefevre. Everyone talks about Ashley Greene as Alice being the queer bait for the whole movie. Rochelle Lefevre is so hot. She's so beautiful.
Rochelle Lefevre
she plays Victoria,
but only in this one.
And in New Moon too, I think.
Is it? I thought she got
and then
replaced.
They switched to Bryce for
in
Eclipse.
You're right.
Where Victoria actually does the heavy lifting.
Right, when there needs to be actual acting, so they got a bigger name actor.
I just remember, like, even as like a kid watching the movies, I was like, oh my God, who is that? She's so pretty. One of my awakenings, I guess.
She is in this a lot. She gets her first sort of big stuff to do in this scene. Laurent and James. I wish they had a good name, a good group name, so I don't have to say Laurent and James and Victoria all the time.
We call them the evil trio.
Okay, that's good. I have them in my notes as the throuple.
That works too.
What I'm going to call them. The throuple walks in and the Cullens all sort of line up. And it gets weirdly tense and dramatic.
I'm afraid your hunting activities have caused something of a mess for us.
Our apologies. We didn't realize the territory had been claimed.
Yes, well, we maintain a permanent residence nearby.
Really? Well, we won't be a problem anymore. We were just passing through.
The humans were tracking us, but we led them east. You should be safe.
Excellent.
So, could you use 3 more players? Oh, come on. Just 1 game.
Sure. Why not?
They have a long conversation that at first feels like double entendre, like they're clearly there to eat Bella, and they're all talking about, do you need 3 more players? And, oh, we just want to play a quick game. But as the scene goes on, we're going to learn that I think Laurent, and this is my theory for the scene as a whole, Laurent genuinely wants to make new friends and just play a fun baseball game.
Yeah, no, I never have read that interaction as anything but genuine.
I've always read it because the way it's shot and the way the lines are delivered and the ways everyone is standing, there is such this tension that clearly it is very clear that these two groups both feel like they are on the verge of fighting. But as I watched it for this one, I was like, oh no, Laurent just wants a friend. And Victoria's there for whatever. And James is really the only threatening one here.
And the fact that later Laurent is so quick to ditch James and Victoria, shows up the house like, hey, you got to watch out.
Yeah.
He's your problem now. Sorry.
To that end, Laurent asks if they could use 3 more players and says, come on, it's just for 1 game, which is not a convincing argument because baseball games last like 3 hours. Not a good way to convince someone to just let you play real quick.
Well, they're zooming around. They got the super speed.
That's true. I guess baseball moves a little faster if you can do that kind of thing.
I think specifically in this scene, obviously I've learned a bit more about like why the vampire culture, I guess, that Stephenie Meyer establishes in the narrative, just from like people telling me about the books. But I feel like this scene especially is where some of that world building falls flat in terms of the film as a standalone piece.
Yeah.
Because while they're having this conversation of could you use 3 more players, they're also like, oh, we didn't know there were any other vampires in this territory. And I'm like, okay, how do vampires claim territory? Like,
right.
We don't really know of all of these other covens of vampires until Breaking Dawn. Carlisle genuinely has this look on his face like he's willing to make it work so long as Bella gets the hell out.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder how often they run into not only other vampires, but also blood drinkers.
Right. And you have to imagine vampires, they're all pretty old. They run in the same social circles. So I imagine seeing a new vampire has got to be like when Bella moves into Forks. There's someone I don't recognize. That's new. That doesn't happen very often.
Right.
So they're having this conversation. As they're having the conversation, they're tossing a baseball around very quickly.
A few of us were leaving. You could take their place. We're about first.
And whenever one of the vampires catches it, it makes like a very loud crack noise, like a fast baseball being caught, like a catcher catching a fastball. I thought that was a nice touch.
Yeah.
I'm the one with the wicked curveball.
Victoria says,
I'm the one with the wicked curveball.
Yeah, which is a weird thing to say. It makes me think maybe she's from Boston because she did say wicked. And it would make sense that, if she's from Boston, she's a big Red Sox fan, so she knows how to throw a curveball, I guess. Kind of weird. Then Jasper says,
oh, well, I think we can handle that.
Oh. I think we can handle that in the awful accent. And what it pained me, I need you to know, it pained me to do that because I am actually from Texas. And for me, an actual Texan to do a bad Texan accent feels like a betrayal.
Well, hey, I'm from Georgia.
Okay.
I did most of my growing up in Georgia. So, I mean, I can't claim the Southern accent. My family's from the Midwest. And I was born there and we moved there when I was moved to Georgia when I was very young. But the Southern accent is bad.
It's awful. And we're going to get a lot into it more in the next movie. But that did raise the question for me, is this Jasper's first line in the movie?
Oh, shit.
I'm pretty sure I would have mentioned that before, Jasper's bad Southern accent. And thinking back through the now 52 episodes I've done of this show, this may be Jasper's first line.
I rewatched the entire movie this afternoon, so I'd be ready to chat about it. I don't think you're wrong.
There's a distinct possibility.
If he said anything, it would be during the dinner date. But even then, I think that's just Alice walking him around like a dog.
No, yeah, he just, because I did that one relatively recently with Cosette, I think.
Oh my gosh.
That earlier. And I'm pretty sure they show up at the end of the scene. Alice does all the talking. He just sort of looks looks like he's in pain. And then the scene ends. I'm pretty sure this is his first line. And thinking ahead of the remaining 40 minutes of the movie, there is a good chance this is his only line in the entire movie.
So I also read an article last night of who was being considered to play the role of Edward. Jackson Rathbone, who plays, I think I said that right?
Yeah.
Who plays Jasper, was one of the top shortlist people for that role.
Interesting.
So you have the main character with all these lines, and then you just get to play this silent guy with a constipated look on his face.
Right. Who gets to talk more in movie 3. Please just hang on for a little while.
Yeah.
And this is about when I start to expect, wait a minute, Laurent actually wants to play baseball here. Mm-hmm. Because the sort of tensions die down a little bit. And both the Cullens and the throuple start to walk away, and it seems like they're actually going to play baseball, and Edward and Bella are going to leave. But then the wind blows, and James smells that Bella is a human.
He has a gratuitous shot there of while everyone's breaking off to go set up for the next inning, I guess, he's just staring. Something's not right. This story isn't clear. And then the wind blows. I liked that attention to... if he's supposed to be this brilliant tracker that he's already kind of picking up on, someone's a human here.
Right.
We can talk about my thoughts on the rest of his plan to hunt Bella down later, but...
Yeah, we'll get to that in future episodes, I guess. But James does get all aggro. This is where the movie briefly turns into Cats.
You brought a snack. A human?
They all start basically hissing at each other and doing that sort of weird, you can't see this, listener, but those weird crouching fighting poses that would be terrible for if an actual fight broke out. That's a bad place to be standing, weirdly that low to the ground.
It's just lazy world building. It feels like if you got a group of actors together and were okay, pretend to be vampires having a fight, and then gave them 0 notes on how to develop that further, that's kind of what you get, I think.
And their stage combat choreographer, whoever was in charge of that, I guess didn't really think too far through. This is maybe I'm asking of too much world building from our crew members on the Twilight movie, but you got to imagine if you're super fast and super strong and can do whatever the vampires can do, I feel like squatting is not going to help with any of that. And you maybe can help you fight a human or an animal, but if you're going to fight another vampire, I just imagine you're just going to stand 2 humans trying to fight each other.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm asking too much for the fight choreographer to think about to create a new martial art for vampires, but it just seems like a crazy choice to make them all sort of squat and make claw hands.
I mean, the squatting makes you sturdier, I guess.
Lower center of gravity, I guess.
I don't know. I did some fight choreography as the unnamed antagonist. So
okay, then please speak to this.
I mean, I can't speak to it amazingly.
Right.
But that'll keep you a bit more stable. But if you're leaning forward with your arms back, what are you going to do? Also, there's a split second right before, so James realizes Bella is a human and is there. And before Edward can even get in front of her, I'm like, why the fuck aren't you going for it?
Right.
If he is that desperate to eat some human blood, you have your chance there and you blew it.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this scene's lack of urgency in a second.
Oh my gosh, thank God.
But my last thought about the fighting stance was, we see later in this movie and in future movies that the whole way vampires fight each other is you're trying to pop off your opponent's head. Mm-hmm. And so the way they are squatting and leaning towards each other is basically saying, hey, here's my head at convenient hand level, and let me make sure that when you reach for me, the first thing you touch is my head, the one thing that will kill me if you tear it off.
And in fact, let me open my mouth and hiss at you so you've got better leverage to rip it off my jaw.
Let me pull my shoulders and arms back so that you have nothing, there's no way, nothing blocking you from getting to my precious neck. It's just a terrible, I don't know who thought of it, and I get why they did it. It looks like they are some monsters about to fight, but just makes no sense from a practical standpoint.
I don't even think they use any super speed in this scene. I might be wrong. I might need to...
You know what? They don't. So let's get to that, because I was just saying there's a lack of urgency in this scene.
Yeah.
The girl is with us. I think it best if you leave.
Things die down a little bit.
I can see the game is over. We'll go now.
Laurent says it's okay, we'll leave now because he's a good person.
James.
And so they leave, and Carl tells Edward to get Bella out of here.
Get Bella out of here. Go.
And so they walk, not run, not vampire whoosh, they walk at normal human walking speed to his car.
Yeah.
He doesn't pick her up or anything like, hey man, she's in danger. Maybe hustle a little faster with your vampire abilities. Don't just sort of slightly urgently stroll back to the car.
Yeah. Well, I think it's like a 3v7, I guess, if you count all the vampires that are present. Like, between that little face-off that they have, like, no one's zooming in to be the, like, body barricade between Bella either.
Right.
But then also, I mean, I wouldn't want them to cut this because it's a nice callback to the earlier scene. When they get her in the car, they're fussing with the seatbelt a bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got it, I'm all right. What, now he's coming after me?
That's the first moment of urgency where she's like, just leave it.
That was another. Why is he trying to buckle her in like a baby? Why not just close the door? Like, if you're gonna, and why use the car at all, honestly? If you can just put her on your back and leap away like you did in the trees not 3-4 scenes ago, why bother with the car at all?
Yeah.
But if you're gonna put her in the car, you think you'd close the door as fast as possible. This scene, no one's thinking about Bella's best interest. They clearly do not operate well under pressure, the Cullens.
It's like they all forget that they're vampires for a second.
Yeah. It's like they've never had to do this before, which I guess kind of makes sense. But like, man, if this is how the Cullens respond in an emergency, I would not be inspired with any confidence if I were Bella.
I think that whole seatbelt moment is actually a callback to earlier when Edward shows up in Port Angeles to save Bella. And like, he's like, say something to distract me. And she's like, you're not wearing your seatbelt.
Yeah.
I think that's what the intention was.
Yeah.
But like, with that being the only moment in that whole confrontation that felt like there was something at stake.
What a crazy, inappropriate time to get your priorities back there, Edward.
We all know he's going to drive like a maniac anyway.
That is how the scene ends. So let's start to wrap up this portion of the show. I'm going to ask you, if you had to give this scene a name, what would it be? And this is also going to be the name of the episode, so make it good.
Oh no.
Remember when I warned you there would be 2 times I was going to put you on the spot? This here is number 1.
Okay. I will actually take some time to think about this.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's why I have an editor. He's definitely not leaving all of this in. All of this precious time you're spending to think.
Well, now you're tempting him to leave it in.
I am, aren't I? Listener, only you will know if he gave into that temptation. I'm also buying you time to think, Sarah. You're welcome.
Yes. Well, see, here's the thing. The most iconic line from that scene is, you brought a snack.
Okay.
So that's how I think I would define that. This whole scene is just the line, you brought a snack. But if we're thinking of podcast episode titles, Sarah brought a snack.
Sarah brought a snack. Is that what you want to go with?
Sure.
All right, just inserting yourself in there.
I brought snacks, guys.
Thank you for making this all about you.
I'm very good at that.
Speaking of making things all about you, Sarah Michelle Ault, if listeners like the sound of your voice and such and want to follow you on social media or maybe find out more about Dusk or Too Lit, where can they do those sort of things? Perhaps on Instagram or TikTok?
Yes, you can find me on, I think, both Instagram and TikTok at ctrl.ault.del. It's Control-Alt-Delete.
Clever.
I believe it's definitely dots on Instagram, but it might be underscores on TikTok, but I don't really post there anyways. And if you're interested in finding out more about Dusk, the Twilight parody musical, the bite-sized love story, you can find them, and by extension me sometimes, on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, I believe, X, whatever.
No one uses that anymore.
All of it is dusk_musical. Yeah, no, I finally deleted off my phone, and my mental health is all the better for it.
Yeah.
Would recommend. And also on YouTube is where we post all of the Dusk A Too Lit podcast episodes.
Okay.
Pretty much our entire first season is available for you to watch, but we are anticipating one more episode that talks about the show's return to Fringe this summer, 2024.
Oh, exciting.
That they all just got done with. So I'm excited to put that together. I am a guest on a few of those episodes. I actually host some of them too, a few of our bonus episodes that we did.
Fun.
I think through my Instagram as well, I maintain a books account, like a writing account, since that is something I would like to be doing with my free time. It's not very prolific yet, but that's just Sarah Michelle Books on Instagram. If you are interested in the type of ways that I like to write about the occult.
All right. If you are interested in learning more about this podcast you're currently listening to, you can follow the show on social media, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok at bitesizedpod_, where you will see I post little clips of the show when the episodes come out, sometimes more often than that if I feel like it. You can also go to twilightpodcast.com and twilightpodcast.com/store for lots of more fun and exciting information. If you want to reach out to the show, you can do so by sending an email to myfavoritetwilightpodcast@gmail.com. Apologies to all other Twilight podcasts, including the one that's on this show. Sorry, I got there first. Thank you so much to my editor, Ben Oxford, for putting this show together. Thank you to the band's swimwear department for letting me use their song Mauled to Death as our theme. Thank you to Kellen Lutz, who was in this scene and didn't get much to do, so we'll get you on a future episode, Kellen. It's going to happen, I promise.
Up.
Dee doesn't listen, but I'm putting it out there into the universe.
He is engaged in Twilight content.
That's the thing,
please,
Sarah.
Kellen,
that's
please.
why I chose him. That's why I'm starting with Kellen, and then I'm going to get other people on.
Kellen, we got to talk about your arm wrestle scene. Come on.
That is it. That is the end of this episode of Bite Sized. As we always say at the end of every episode.
Oh, shit. I'm supposed to say something? There we go. That's it. That's the clip.
There we go. That's it. That's the clip. See you next time.
I'm the one with the wicked curveball.
Oh, well, I think we can handle that.
Oh.
We shall see.